I have a few questions for you before we start. How often do you practice your listening skills? Do you listen to English every day? What type of content do you enjoy listening to? Music, podcasts, or maybe movies? The more you listen, the better you become. So today I'm going to talk a little slower than usual to help you understand, and together, we'll work on improving your listening skills step by step. As we dive into today's topic, remember that practice makes perfect. And the more you expose yourself to English, the easier it becomes. Listening is one of the most important skills when learning a new language, and today, we'll talk about how you can improve your listening skills with simple, daily practices. Now, let's start with something simple. When was the last time you listened to an English podcast? How did it go? Did you understand everything, or were there some parts that were a little tricky? It's okay if you didn't catch everything. That's part of the learning process. The good news is, today's session will help you tackle some of those challenges. So, dear listeners, today I'll focus on how you can improve your English listening skills by making listening a daily habit. You don't need to spend hours each day. Just a few minutes of focused listening can make a big difference. Remember, the more often you practice, the better you will get. Don't worry if you don't understand everything right away. It's completely normal. One of the easiest ways to improve your listening is by listening to content that interests you. Do you like watching movies or TV shows? Try watching them in English. Even if you don't understand all the words, you'll start to notice patterns in how words are used, and you'll begin to pick up new vocabulary. If you find the language difficult to follow, try turning on the subtitles. This way, you can match the words you hear with the text, which can be very helpful for beginners. Another way to improve is by listening to podcasts. There are so many podcasts out there, covering all kinds of topics. Find one that you enjoy. It's important to listen to things that interest you because it keeps you motivated. Whether it's a podcast about history, food, or technology, make sure it's something you like. The more you enjoy what you're listening to, the more likely you'll keep practicing. Now let's talk about active listening. What do I mean by this? Active listening means that you don't just listen passively while doing other things. Instead, try to really focus on what's being said. When you listen, pay attention to the words, but also try to understand the context. Ask yourself, what is the speaker trying to say? What's the main idea? Are there any words or phrases that are difficult for you? Active listening is when you take the time to understand the deeper meaning of what's being said. In addition to active listening, try repeating what you hear. After listening to a podcast or watching a show, pause and repeat some of the sentences you heard. This helps with pronunciation, vocabulary, and memory. If you don't understand something, don't be afraid to rewind and listen again. Repetition is a great way to learn, and it helps improve both listening and speaking. Let's not forget that listening is a skill that requires practice. Just like learning to ride a bike or play an instrument, the more you practice, the better you become. Don't get discouraged if you don't understand everything at first. Keep listening, keep practicing, and you'll see improvements. Also, don't hesitate to listen to different types of English. Try listening to speakers with different accents and voices. The more variety you expose yourself to, the more adaptable your listening skills will become. Now that we've covered some key tips on how to improve your listening skills, let's dive deeper into each one, giving you even more strategies to help you on your learning journey. As we move forward, I want you to keep in mind that learning English is a gradual process. It's completely okay to take small steps each day. Each small step you take adds up, and before you know it, you'll see great progress. We've already discussed how important it is to listen regularly, even for just a few minutes. But let's expand on this idea. One way to make your listening practice more effective is by setting a routine. For example, you could listen to a short English podcast episode every morning as part of your daily routine, or watch a 5 to 10 minute video before bed. This creates a regular listening habit, which helps your brain get used to hearing English. Over time, your ability to understand different accents and vocabulary will improve. And remember, it doesn't have to be all about the formal content like podcasts or educational videos. Listening to English in fun, real-life situations is a great way to improve as well. For instance, if you enjoy music, try listening to your favorite English songs and reading the lyrics at the same time. This is a fun way to engage with the language. By understanding song lyrics, you'll learn common phrases, new words, and even cultural references. Songs often have a rhythm and repetition that make them easier to remember, so it's a great exercise for both listening and pronunciation. Now, let's take a closer look at active listening. As I mentioned earlier, active listening involves focusing entirely on what's being said without distractions. When you're listening actively, it's important to remember to pause and think about the content you're hearing. Don't just let the words pass by. Try to understand the meaning behind the message. For example, if you're listening to a conversation in English, don't just focus on individual words. Instead, try to understand the context. Ask yourself, what's the speaker trying to tell me? What's the purpose of this conversation? These questions help you process the information deeply and ensure that you're not just hearing words, but understanding them. Another great way to practice active listening is by summarizing what you've heard. After listening to a short story, podcast, or conversation, pause and try to retell it in your own words. This helps reinforce your understanding of what you've just heard. It also builds your speaking skills as you're practicing recalling and using the words and phrases you've learned. You can even keep a journal to write down summaries of what you've listened to each day. This will give you a record of your progress and help you see how much you've learned over time. Now let's talk a bit about the benefits of reviewing and revisiting content. After you've listened to something once, go back and listen again. You'll catch words and phrases that you missed the first time. This is especially useful for complex or advanced content. By reviewing, you give your brain the opportunity to absorb and understand the information better. Over time, you'll notice that the vocabulary and phrases you've learned become more familiar and easier to understand in different contexts. Another tip to improve your listening is to break down your listening practice into smaller segments. Rather than listening to an entire podcast or video in one go, try breaking it into shorter sections. For example, listen to just 1 minute or a few sentences at a time. After each section, pause and think about what you heard. You can even replay it if needed. This is a more focused way to listen and helps you retain more information. You'll also get the chance to concentrate on specific parts of the content that you might have found tricky. In addition to breaking down content, it's useful to challenge yourself with different types of listening activities. For example, listening to a conversation is different from listening to a lecture or a news report. Try practicing different types of listening by exploring podcasts, YouTube videos, or audiobooks with a variety of formats. This exposes you to different speaking styles and topics, which is essential for improving your listening skills. As we continue to explore different ways to improve your listening skills, let's now dive deeper into the concept of repetition. Repetition is an incredibly powerful tool when learning any new skill, and listening is no exception. As you practice, listening to the same material multiple times, your brain starts to absorb the information in a way that allows you to better understand and retain it. Think of it as exercising your listening muscles. The more you repeat, the stronger your listening skills become. For instance, when you listen to an audio clip or podcast episode, take the time to listen to it more than once. After each round, you might notice that some words or phrases become clearer or more familiar. This is your brain creating connections between the sounds and the meanings. So, the next time you hear those words in a different context, you'll be able to recognize them more easily. It's almost like building a mental library of words and phrases that your brain can retrieve when needed. But repetition isn't just about listening to the same thing over and over. It's also important to listen to different kinds of content. Which brings us to our next strategy, diversifying your listening materials. One of the best ways to improve your listening comprehension is by listening to a wide range of content in English. This means not only listening to podcasts, but also watching TV shows, movies, and YouTube videos, or listening to music, radio programs, and audiobooks. Each of these types of media presents English in a different format, giving you exposure to different accents, speaking speeds, vocabulary, and expressions. This diversity in content allows your brain to adapt and improve in many areas of listening. For example, podcasts usually feature conversations or discussions on a variety of topics, making them an excellent resource for listening to real, spontaneous English. On the other hand, TV shows and movies often feature more casual conversational language, with characters using slang, idioms, and expressions that you might encounter in everyday speech. By exposing yourself to both formal and informal English, you're equipping yourself with the ability to understand a wider range of spoken language. Over time, you'll notice that your understanding improves, and you'll be able to follow along with conversations more easily, even if the speakers talk fast or use complex vocabulary. Next, let's discuss the importance of listening actively, which means not just hearing the words but truly trying to understand their meaning. Active listening involves engaging with the speaker and processing the message, rather than just passively hearing the sounds. A great way to practice active listening is to listen to short audio clips and try to summarize what you've heard. You can even pause the audio at intervals and try to predict what will come next. This will train your brain to pay closer attention and will help you become more aware of the details in conversations. Another active listening exercise you can try is asking yourself questions about the content after you've finished listening. For example, you could ask, "What was the main idea of the conversation? What new vocabulary did I hear?" Or, "How did the speaker express their thoughts?" These questions encourage you to think critically about the material and engage with it on a deeper level. Another helpful strategy is to break down listening practice into smaller, manageable chunks. When you're just starting out or if you're working with more difficult material, it can be overwhelming to listen to long segments without pausing to reflect. Instead, listen to short portions of a podcast or video and focus on understanding just a few sentences at a time. After each segment, pause and reflect on what you heard. You can even repeat the segment to reinforce your understanding. By breaking down the content, you're allowing your brain to process the information more easily and to focus on smaller, more manageable details. At this point, you may be wondering how to deal with situations where you don't understand everything. That's being said. This is perfectly normal and happens to all learners of a second language. The key here is not to get discouraged. If you don't understand a word or phrase, don't worry too much. Instead, try to focus on the overall meaning of the conversation. You can also try to guess the meaning of unfamiliar words by looking at the context. For example, if someone is talking about going to the store and mentions a word you don't understand, think about what they might be referring to based on the rest of the conversation. This strategy helps you use the context to fill in the gaps and understand the message even without knowing every single word. In addition to improving your listening skills, remember that practicing speaking goes hand in hand with improving your listening. As you listen more, you'll become familiar with the natural rhythm and flow of spoken English, which will make it easier for you to speak confidently. For instance, you can try to imitate the way native speakers pronounce words and sentences. Pay attention to their intonation, stress, and rhythm, and try to mimic these patterns when you speak. This will not only help improve your listening, but also enhance your pronunciation and fluency. Practicing speaking while you listen reinforces the connection between the two skills and accelerates your progress. Another tip is to focus on listening to content that is related to topics you enjoy. When you're listening to something that interests you, you're more likely to stay engaged and motivated. Whether it's a podcast about travel, cooking, sports, or any other topic you like, listening to something enjoyable will make the process much more enjoyable and less of a chore. The more passionate you are about the subject matter, the more likely you'll stay focused and improve your listening skills. Let's talk about something else that's often overlooked: the power of silence. After you've listened to a portion of content, take a moment to reflect on it. Don't rush into the next piece of material too quickly. Pause, close your eyes, and think about what you've just heard. This reflection time is incredibly important for strengthening your listening abilities. It allows you to process the information and internalize the vocabulary and expressions you've learned. When you give yourself time to reflect, your brain has a chance to consolidate the information and make it stick for the long term. Now let's briefly touch on one of the most effective techniques for improving your listening skills: shadowing. Shadowing is a technique where you listen to a speaker and try to repeat what they say in real time. This technique is great for practicing both listening and speaking at the same time. You can start by listening to short audio clips, repeating them word for word as you hear them, and then gradually increasing the length of the audio clips as you become more comfortable. Shadowing helps you improve your ability to understand spoken English and increases your speaking fluency. It's a fantastic way to train your ear to recognize different sounds, and it can also help improve your pronunciation and speaking speed. As we continue, let's not forget the importance of patience. Improving your listening skills takes time, and there will be moments when it feels like you're not making progress. But I want you to know that every bit of effort you put into practicing counts. Even on days when it feels difficult, you're still making progress. Consistent practice is the key to success, and as long as you stay committed to your listening exercises, you will gradually notice improvements. Finally, I want to encourage you to enjoy the process of learning English. Don't worry about being Perfect. Instead, focus on the joy of discovering new words, phrases, and ideas. The more fun you have with your listening practice, the more motivated you'll be to continue. With consistent effort, you'll find that your listening skills improve, and you'll be able to enjoy understanding English more and more each day. So, dear listeners, remember to keep practicing daily, stay patient, and most importantly, have fun with your learning journey. Keep listening, keep challenging yourself, and watch your English skills grow. Let's now focus on another key strategy that will greatly enhance your listening ability: contextual listening. Understanding context is crucial when trying to comprehend spoken English. In real-life conversations, you might not catch every word, especially if the speaker talks quickly or uses unfamiliar vocabulary. But the context of the conversation can help you fill in the gaps. For instance, if you're listening to a conversation about a holiday, even if you don't understand some of the words, you can still make a pretty good guess about the meaning based on the general topic, the tone of voice, and any visual clues available. This is why it's essential to not just focus on individual words, but to understand the bigger picture. Take a moment and think about a situation where you've been in a conversation but didn't understand every single word. What did you do? If you thought about the topic, the emotions of the speaker, and the surrounding context, you probably found a way to understand the conversation. This is what we mean by contextual listening. When you practice this type of listening, you become more skilled at identifying important information and ignoring distractions. This brings me to another point: listening for key words. One technique to improve your listening is to focus on key words or phrases that are most important to the message. Not every word in a sentence is necessary to understand the main idea. Often it's the verbs, nouns, or adjectives that carry the most meaning. When you listen for these key words, you can often figure out the general meaning of what's being said even if you don't catch everything. For example, if someone says, "I went to the store to buy some fruit and vegetables," the key words here are store, buy, and fruit and vegetables. These words give you the main idea of the sentence. Even if you miss the words in between, you'll still understand what the speaker is talking about. It's also important to listen to different accents and dialects of English. English is spoken in so many different ways around the world, and each accent has its own unique sound and rhythm. By listening to a variety of accents, you not only improve your listening comprehension, but you also become more familiar with the diversity of English-speaking cultures. For example, if you're used to hearing American English, try listening to British or Australian English. You may find that some words are pronounced differently, or that certain phrases are used in different ways. The more exposure you get to different accents, the better you'll be at understanding English in all its forms. Next, let's consider how you can improve your understanding of fast speech. Many English learners struggle with understanding native speakers who talk quickly, but this is something that can be improved with practice. One way to do this is by gradually increasing the speed of the content you listen to. Start with slower-paced podcasts or videos, and as you get comfortable, slowly increase the speed. You can adjust the playback speed on platforms like YouTube, so you can listen to content at a speed that suits your current level. At first, it may be difficult to understand, but with consistent practice, your brain will adapt, and you'll get better at keeping up with faster speech. Another technique that can be really helpful is listening and repeating. You've probably heard of the technique of shadowing that I mentioned earlier, but you can also try repeating what you hear immediately after you hear it. This is a great way to train both your listening and speaking skills. After listening to a short clip or conversation, pause it and try to repeat exactly what you heard. Pay attention to the pronunciation, stress, and intonation of the speaker. This will help you not only improve your listening, but also your speaking fluency. Plus, you'll become more comfortable with different English accents and speaking styles. It's also worth mentioning the power of note-taking while listening. While listening to English, try jotting down key points or new words that you don't understand. This helps you stay focused and engage actively with the material. After listening, go back and review your notes. You can look up the meanings of any new words and try to use them in sentences. This will help reinforce the new vocabulary and improve your overall understanding of the content. Additionally, writing things down helps solidify your memory of what you've heard, which is especially helpful when you're learning English in the long term. Another technique to boost your listening skills is using subtitles. When you're watching a movie or a TV show in English, try using English subtitles instead of translations in your native language. Reading the subtitles while listening to the spoken words helps reinforce the connection between the spoken and written form of English. It's also useful to watch content that is aimed at language learners, as these often have clear pronunciation and slower pacing. There are many YouTube channels and websites that provide content specifically for English learners, so be sure to check them out. By watching and listening at the same time, you'll start to pick up more natural language, idiomatic expressions, and vocabulary that native speakers use on a daily basis. At this point, I'd like to encourage you to find a language learning community or a study buddy to practice listening with. It can be very helpful to have someone to practice with, especially if you're just starting out or if you're working on a challenging level of English. By practicing together, you can discuss the content you listen to, share new vocabulary, and correct each other's mistakes. Having a study buddy can make the process more enjoyable, and it helps you stay motivated. You can join online forums, social media groups, or even language exchange platforms to find others who are working on improving their English. Let's move on to another strategy: the use of language apps. Many language apps include listening, exercises where you can practice understanding different accents, speaking speeds, and contexts. Some apps even have interactive features, such as quizzes or games, to test your listening comprehension and vocabulary. These can be a fun and engaging way to practice regularly and measure your progress over time. If you don't already use a language app, I highly recommend exploring some options. They often provide tailored exercises to help you work on specific areas of weakness, such as pronunciation or understanding spoken English in noisy environments. Lastly, I want to talk about the importance of listening to a variety of topics. If you only listen to content related to one subject, you might struggle when you encounter a conversation or podcast on a completely different topic. By listening to a variety of topics, you prepare yourself to understand English in different contexts. For example, listening to content about technology, culture, history, and daily life can introduce you to new vocabulary and expressions. Each time you listen to something new, you expand your vocabulary and improve your overall comprehension. And as always, be patient with yourself. Learning English, especially listening, takes time and effort. But with consistent practice and the strategies I've shared with you today, you will definitely improve. Continue practicing every day, stay motivated, and embrace the process. The more you expose yourself to English, the more confident you'll become in your ability to understand and speak it. So, dear listeners, remember that listening is a skill that can be developed with practice. Use the tips and techniques I've already shared today to enhance your listening abilities. Keep practicing, keep listening, and soon you'll find yourself understanding English better and better every day. Let's dive even deeper into how you can make your listening practice even more effective. One strategy that many advanced learners use, which can be especially beneficial at your level, is active listening. This means not just passively hearing the words, but actively thinking about the content as you listen. For example, while listening to an English podcast or watching a video, try to predict what will happen next in the conversation. Think about the general topic, the clues in the speaker's tone, and their body language, if you can see them. Predicting what's coming next will force your brain to stay engaged with the material, and you'll get better at understanding natural speech patterns. Moreover, during active listening, it's also helpful to pause frequently and reflect. After listening to a section of audio, stop and ask yourself questions. For instance, what was the main idea? What were the key details? Was there anything you didn't understand? This practice helps you to not just hear words, but really absorb their meaning. Try to identify any new vocabulary and take notes on it. When you encounter a word you don't understand, pause the recording and look it up. This will deepen your vocabulary knowledge and improve your ability to comprehend similar words in future conversations. Now, let's talk about the importance of using audio material that is slightly above your current level. It's natural for beginners and even intermediate learners to feel frustrated when they can't understand everything, but listening to material that is just slightly above your level will push you to learn new words and structures. It may seem difficult at first, but don't worry. This challenge will gradually improve your listening skills. By exposing yourself to a range of topics and vocabulary that stretch your knowledge, you increase your chances of encountering the same words or expressions again in the future. This reinforces your learning and makes the process more rewarding. Another powerful tool in your English listening practice is repetition. Repetition helps to reinforce what you've learned. After listening to a piece of content, go back and listen to it again, perhaps even multiple times. The first time you listen, you may not catch all the words, but after hearing the same content several times, you'll begin to understand more. You will also notice new words or phrases that you missed the first time. This is why many language learners recommend listening to the same audio or video several times over the course of a few days or weeks. The repetition allows the language to sink in deeper and enhances your comprehension. In addition to repetition, changing the type of content you listen to can significantly improve your ability to understand spoken English. A common mistake English learners make is sticking to one type of listening material, such as podcasts or YouTube videos. While these are valuable resources, it's important to diversify your sources. Listen to audiobooks, news reports, TV shows, radio programs, and even informal conversations between friends. Each source has a different style and tone, and by listening to various types of content, you get a more well-rounded understanding of English. You'll be able to understand both formal and informal speech, and you'll become familiar with different registers and tones of conversation. Something else that's incredibly helpful for improving listening is shadowing. Shadowing is when you listen to a recording and immediately repeat what you hear, mimicking the speaker's intonation, speed, and pronunciation. This is an advanced listening technique that improves both your listening and speaking skills. By repeating what you hear, you also train your ear to catch nuances in speech that might be difficult to understand otherwise. This is especially helpful for non-